Prepare for launching.
This is Drive Time Live with Mark Hahn on AM 1360, FM 94.9 KSCJ. For a recap of today's biggest news stories, stocks, sports, weather, and more, here's Mark Hahn.
All right, we are back, 46 degrees and windy, and a little clearing tomorrow, sunshine, but cooler temperatures. It's fall in Iowa, just as it is fall in Lincoln, Nebraska. Let me give you the official... From the College of Business at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, Dr. Jennifer Davidson. How about that intro?
That's awesome. Great voice. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Oh, you're very welcome. I caught you during a Zoom call here when I called to reconfirm. So, the one thing I think that was... I think that I left you with at least a smile on your face during the Zoom call. God knows we know how dry they can be. We're talking about maybe you ought to go to Washington, D.C. and teach them something about economics.
Right? Oh, gosh. It's a little bit frustrating. Really, it's the polarization that's frustrating. Definitely, there's some lack of economic understanding, for sure. But the polarization actually really is what frustrates me, and digging in their heels and not actually communicating. Mm-hmm. So we need to talk about both of those things.
Well, communication is important, not only in governmental affairs but also in marriages and many other things. I mean, communication, 100%. That is the key. Yeah. Dr. Davidson is assistant professor of practice in economics, president of the Nebraska Council on Economics Education, Nebraska Bankers Association faculty fellow. I got to ask her, what's that mean? Assistant professor of practice in economics.
Yes. I'm glad you asked, because these types of appointments for professors are relatively new, probably a decade, 15 years old. But that professor of practice means we are the specialty teaching faculty members. We have reduced research requirement, and we are really all about the students. We love the students, and we love the education teaching piece. So we have higher student count and lower research requirements.
So you'd be like the teaching surgeon at the Mayo Clinic for the school for
That's
doctors.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
That's right.
So, pay attention, because I'm there in the real world, students, and learn something. How tough is it now? I mean, are students really up to par on economics? I mean, are they even teaching it at the high schools anymore?
So, yes, exactly right. That's exactly what we're talking about today. So I am in Nebraska, so I'm going to talk mostly about what's happening in Nebraska.
Absolutely.
There are state standards in economics, which includes some personal finance, that are required to be taught to every student in Nebraska. That said, there's a lot of flexibility in how that gets taught and where that gets taught. So we have a lot of discrepancy across the state of Nebraska. What I can tell you is that in Nebraska, 143 of our 244 school districts offer an economics course, but only 55 require a semester, an actual course in economics for graduation. So this amounts to about 43% of our student population that's required to take a semester of econ before graduating high school.
Is anymore these smartphones that just about everybody carries except me? I still have a crank on the side of my phone. I mean, it's an old little LG flip phone. It doesn't do much. I can text and talk, but that's it. I'm not surfing the internet or doing anything. But people have, high-powered computers, more powerful than the computers that actually took care of the Apollo launch. I mean,
I know.
Yeah, and they have this. Is it dumbing kids down, or even adults too, for that matter? When you have all this right there at your fingertips, they can easily calculate things.
So that's an interesting question. I don't know if that's the case. I would definitely not use dumbing it down, but we do have a lot of access to information. And what we need to do is be cognizant of where that information is coming from and if it's reliable or not. That's really the trick here. We can certainly be more productive. We can reach more people. We can calendar, phone, post, at the drop of a hat, one little button, and you can do a lot of things. But I think I love technology, and it increases productivity for sure. But we really need to be cognizant and teach media literacy on top of economics.
Yeah, well, absolutely. One of the little quotes from the press release here, it says, "A democracy requires its citizenry to have a solid understanding of basic economics. Now, when you say basic economics, you're talking about how to keep a balance on a checkbook or whatever? Because, again, these smartphones anymore, your airline ticket, everything is right there, the QR codes, everything is right there on your smartphone. Can kids balance a checkbook anymore? I know it's almost outdated. It's like the buggy whip. Who uses those anymore?
Yeah. Who has a checkbook? I actually do have
I do too.
And I use it. But there's a lot for me to talk about right there. So just give me a minute here. Economics is so much more than balancing a checkbook.
Well, sure.
That is really the personal finance, which economics is beyond personal finance. Personal finance should be taught, and it should be taught from an economic perspective. But let me give you just economics at its core, what it is, because I think people don't know. I really don't, and that's part of the issue. So economics at its core is really all about decision making. So it's the fact that scarcity exists. We can't have everything we want. We have to make choices. So economics is this science of this choice making. People generally think it's all about money, and a lot of times that's how economics is taught because teachers are not adequately prepared. That's our next conversation. But it's so much more than money. It is about its people, its choices, its incentives, its consequences that lie in the future. It explains everything from why individual decision making, why I might eat one more slice of pizza, to how many employees to hire, so business decision making, to what's happening in the national economy with interest rates and the Federal Reserve. So this more global perspective and decision making. So the magic for me, why I love econ so much, the magic is that understanding that economics really helps you see the hidden side of things. You can really see both sides of an issue. It can tell you what's likely to happen given a certain scenario. It's seeing the unseen. So for me, this is why I like to call it economics is this superpower. It's this analytical processing decision making that we need students to have. It's critical thinking. So we have to do a better job of teaching it, but we also have to ensure students have access and take good economics courses, and then that's where the teachers are going to come in.
Or are they learning? Are they going to be learning about supply chain? Are they going to learn about laws of supply and demand, which supply chain has to do with too, and inflation? The things that we hear. These are the words we're hearing, anymore these days since the change of the presidency. We're hearing a lot more of these things in the economy. These are the things I think that kind of, as you said, kind of fly over people's heads at times.
That's right. So I'm so glad you brought that up. So if you read any headline right now, and probably for the most part, you've got an economic situation happening. Inflation is a big one. Supply chain is a piece of that. Supply and demand, absolutely. So we are talking about a backup in supply chain, which means we've got all of this pent-up demand, right? We've been locked down in this pandemic, and we're just starting to emerge, and we have all these wants, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to get things. Yet we have all of these companies that have been shut down, and so there's this bottleneck. So anytime you have more demand than you can have supply, you're going to have a rise in prices. That's your Econ 101 supply and demand analysis. Right. It's going to have an increase in prices. So what piece of it is actual inflation related to any kind of stimulus that we've had, and what piece of it is related to the supply chain bottleneck? So this is what's all happening in the news, and this is why, to understand it, we need students to have economic understanding.
Well, they need to also talk about workforce, and that's very important for this supply chain. And right now, I mean, you name it, you can talk about it, just about any business. Trucking has been brought up a lot. There's not enough truckers to go around. Airline pilots is going to be a problem with air. There seems to be problems all the way down the chain. Now, part of that was the government's own fault when you're giving people extra money when they are unemployed due to COVID. So the people are saying, hey, I'm working. I'm earning just about as much as I did when I was working, if not more. Why should I go back to work? So there's a disincentive from the government, but also one other disincentive I wanted to bring up here is vaccine mandates. You see, the government is forcing a lot of different companies to get the shot, and the companies themselves are saying, okay, because we're being mandated, we have to pass this on to our employees. That's causing a big problem in the workforce as well.
Sure. And there's a lot to parse out there as well.
Yes.
So again, I'm going to go back to supply and demand analysis with truckers and worker shortages and unemployment checks. I will freely admit, on the unemployment issue, when they had decided to give an extra $600 a week for unemployment, I was pretty shocked, actually. I thought, no, right? That's just typo. They meant a month, right?
That's
so
what
I will
thought.
admit, whether that was right or wrong, I don't necessarily want to get into that, but I was definitely shocked. And I will admit, you're absolutely right. These policies come with then incentives and disincentives for workers to go to work or not. So if you're earning more now from unemployment, then it makes sense to stay home versus to go to work. I get that, right? That's responding to incentives. I also want to say, though, that all of that is stopped at this point. All of those stimuli for unemployment have run out, and we're still seeing the worker shortage. So there's also a piece of it that is sort of this worker revolt for these lower paid jobs, that we have some savings now and we can take our time to find a better job. And that's not necessarily a bad thing either, right? If people are willing to take some time and improve their lot and look for a better job, that's a signal back to employers that maybe they need to increase the pay, which is a price, right? If there's a shortage and you don't have enough workers, maybe you need to increase that salary. So again, it signals in the marketplace.
Yep, makes a big difference. And Dr. Davidson is my guest here, Dr. Jennifer Davidson. And sadly, we are out of time here. But from the College of Business at the University of Nebraska, Dr. Davidson is Assistant Professor of Practice in Economics and President of the Nebraska Council on Economics Education, Nebraska Bankers Association Faculty Fellow. I'm going to give this website here real quick. If you'd like to visit this website for activities, competitions, events, about economics, go to Nebraska Council, COUNCIL.UNL for the University of Nebraska Lincoln .edu. That's nebraskacouncil.unl.edu, and find out a little bit more. Dr. Davidson, it's been a pleasure to talk with you. I wish we had more time, but unfortunately, time flies by very fast.
It does. It was fun. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Well, you're very welcome. Thank you very much, and I look forward to maybe the next time having you back on.
Sounds good.
All right. Dr. Jennifer Davidson, my guest here on Drive Time Live.